wanna stay ahead of the curve, then follow my words. All we doing, teach, train, innovate, solve, yeah. Teach, train, innovate, solve. If you wanna be ahead of the curve, then follow my words.
A focused 15 minutes to 30 minutes after school is neurologically more effective than 1 hour of studying in frustration. You're just not going to maintain or retain the information. And you're not going to maintain coming back to do that same thing each time. But as I close out our conversation, it's really important for me to highlight a few things from those 3 phases that I talked to you about. One of them is the first one is what to avoid when decompressing. I told you what to do, but these feel helpful, but they actually increase your fatigue. Doom scrolling on your phone, venting without a boundary, and laying down for just a minute is going to cause problems. So jumping straight into studying without a pause can be an issue too. So my statement again to you, decompressing, it matters. Now, the low lifting learning is how tired educators keep momentum without burning out. It's not about doing less because you don't care. It's more about doing actually what works when your energy is limited. And then my final part, when we're closing the loop. One well-chosen question, fully understood, does more for your retention than 30 minutes of rereading. Is rereading important? Reading is. But some of these things that I'm talking to you about, they're the things that frustrate you and make you not want to study. But explaining a concept out loud, it'll strengthen your memory more than just highlighting the text or highlighting the book pages. Stopping at a clear end point, it triggers and protects your motivation for the following day. See, I'm always truthful about a few things. And that is that you're not behind. You're building capacity under real conditions. And that's what matters. You're doing meaningful work, both in the day and then going at it toward your goal in the night. The path forward does not require more sacrifice. You've already sacrificed quite a bit. It requires better alignment. And so as always, I'm hopeful that the things that I share with you, the information that I provide you with, brings you to some conclusive moments, reflecting on what you really need to do in order to acquire your goal. And my company is here to service you and help you to get over the hump and pass your exam. Other companies will give you a pass guarantee, and they will have some kind of clause within there. They've been taking your money for months, not helping you or providing you with motivation. But that's not what we're about. Truly, my heart is to help educators to stay in their classroom because they are already a rock star, but the pedagogy is lacking. So, as always, I'm grateful for you watching. If you'd like to learn more about us, learn more about our products and services, you can find that at ttinnovate.com. We are on all of the social media platforms that you see below at TT Innovates. And I would love it if you would like, subscribe, and share this material. Because again, as I started this conversation, your brain is inundated, oversaturated with lots of information at the end of the day. But the keys that I gave you will help you, because 15 minutes versus 0 minutes of studying will get you closer to your goal than 1 hour full of frustration where you can't remember what you went over. All right, everyone. Thank you for being patient, waiting for this one to drop. We have another one coming on Monday, but I wanted to be caught guilty of giving you this week's topic. Have a great evening and afternoon. Thanks again. Good night. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to TTIS, where we build confident, empowered educators through empathy, strategy, and practical tools that you can use today. Our agenda addresses our topic that we missed during our little cold snap, and that is studying, or how to study after a long day of teaching. I know that this particular one is going to be a great one. I hope that it helps you as you continue to make waves to get closer to passing your certification exam. And as always, I'm grateful to have you here on our channel at TT Innovates. My name is Tamara Gibson, and let's jump right into what we intend on doing today. Our agenda for today is to talk about how traditional studying fails us at night, how after-school study reset is a necessity, and I'm going to share with you some ways in which to do that. And then I'm going to close it out by talking about studying smarter and not necessarily this discussion of longer, which is sometimes an issue for many of us. But if your day has been anything like mine were, it's been a long instructional day full of labor, some visible labor, and what I like to call invisible labor. What do I mean by invisible labor? Where you're spending the whole day with classroom management, decision fatigue, and emotional regulation on the parts of your students, and also sometimes on the part of us. All of these things happen within the course of a day, and they can be very taxing. So the thought really is, if I can't study after work, sometimes people think there's something wrong. But that's absurd, because let's face it, after a full day of teaching, your brain is not lazy, it's saturated. The question is not, can you study, but how? That's really what I'm going to be addressing this evening with you. That's really my agenda. My goal tonight is to spend that time on that. And so you get home, and you've made it to your home, and there's all kinds of other things that are possibly pulling on you before you've made it through the door. But you made it home later than you planned. The day was already full. As I said before, you're explaining directions, you're managing emotions, you're making hundreds of small decisions, even before lunchtime. And you tell yourself, I'll rest a few minutes and then I'll study. Have I stepped on a few toes with that so far? You sit down, phone in your hand, shoes still on, and time begins to get away from us. It passes. And when we finally open up a study guide, the words look familiar, but they don't stick. You reread the same paragraph as you're drifting off to sleep. Your mind drifts, then wondering about tomorrow's lessons, maybe a student that you're worried about, an email that you need to send that you need to answer. And you close the book and you think, maybe I'm just too tired. Maybe I should be further along by now. But here's the truth. Nothing's wrong with you. Traditional studying assumes that a brain is fresh and quiet. That's not the brain of some of us who have just finished a full day of work. That brain saturation that I'm talking about is a real thing. Decision fatigue is high. Your stress is still present, and working memory is often limited. So rereading a long study session That's not, it doesn't mean that you lack discipline, because I think that's something else that we think of. Really, it's a failure of strategy. And that's what I come to you weekly talking to you about. Whether I'm talking to you about strategy regarding a classroom technique, or I'm talking to you about how to study properly, it's really about strategy. And it means that your strategy no longer aligns with the brain that you're trying to use at night. Night studying fails when it asks a tired brain to perform like it's a rested one. Once you understand that, hopefully something will shift. And as I said, tonight, that's really what I'm going to focus on and give you keys to success to help in that. Because the problem was never effort. The problem was the approach. You don't need more pressure. You need a different entry point. So shorter sessions, clear focus, a plan that works without exhausting you, a plan that doesn't work against you. That is the progress that where progress actually begins. I've looked up a few studies, and most of the studies advice that I've seen floating around, sometimes even I give it, is that morning energy, that quiet brain. Those are all the literature that I've read and seen. But here are a few brain science explanations. Decision fatigue reduces working memory. Stress elevates cortisol, which interferes with your recall. While you're rereading, you're cramming, you're trying to do these long sessions, they often backfire after work. And then here's the biggest cost: guilt. And this guilt-based studying, it just reinforces avoidance. So what are some best practices that could help with this? So as you can see, all of my pictures that I have on the screen is somebody fatigued, that you just have had enough. Well, I don't want to leave you in that state. I want to give you some help. And so I'm going to walk you through 3 phases of what I will say are after school study habits that you can begin to form. Ways in which to help you to work, as I'll talk about later, smarter and not harder. But once we put our work in terms of lighter, shorter, and more intentional, these are the ways in which these phases can be implemented. And I always like to bring you practical things, because why bring you something that is not going to work? My company is about helping you to get down to the the goal that you're trying to achieve, and to really face forward on it and not get distracted by all the other things that try to talk to you. So one of the things that in phase 1 is to decompress. It's an act of transitioning yourself out of teacher mode. Maybe I write down everything that's still looping in my head. That's something that I use to kind of settle myself down. Another method is changing clothes. Changing out of your teacher gear and changing into something lighter. Maybe 2 minutes of slow breathing. You can't necessarily force these things to happen. It has to be done on a continuous basis. And another thing that you can't force is the stress, moving the stress out of your nervous system. But there are some practical, educational, friendly ways to decompress that actually work after a long testing day. And they're designed to lower your cognitive load quickly, not turn it into another task. So some of the ways that I stated before, and I'm really going to go into the physical reset, because I think that it's one of the greatest and quickest way for you to change the state of operation that you're in. These work because the body leads the brain. You change your clothes immediately, you're teaching. Clothing keeps you in teacher mode. Washing your face and hands with warm water, a simple sensory reset. Maybe stepping outside for a few minutes, allowing yourself to breathe in the light air and get some vitamin D as more helps more than we can ever think. Gentle stretching, neck, shoulder rolls, where many of us hold a lot of our stress. These physical cues tell the nervous system that the workday has ended. And decompression is not restlessness or avoidance. It is preparation. So these physical cues really will help to end our day. As I said before, it will help you to begin to get into the mode of studying and help and allow you to ready to reset your brain in order to take on some information. And that leads me into my second part, which is phase 2. This lower lift, learning lift, utilizing short, engaging activities that don't drain you. Like, the goal is not coverage. You know, sometimes we're thinking about, I got to cover all these things, and that's all that's on your mind. But it's really not about coverage. The goal is connection. After work, your brain is tired, but it's not empty. So when studying asks for heavy lifting, like rereading a whole chapter or rewriting notes or cramming for long stretches of time, your brain and your body are going to resist. Not because you cannot learn, but because the demand is too high at that particular moment. So lower lifting learning works because it lowers the entry barriers. Instead of asking, can I study for an hour and put in that work? Focus on one small thing that you can engage in fully. Maybe it's an objective. Maybe it's a skill. Maybe it's a short video. There might be one exam question and its rationale that will help you. One short concept explanation. 1 to 2 exam questions with the rationale, as I stated before, or listening to a short concept explanation, reviewing a single anchor chart or a framework. Those will help. It will assist you. Versus the opposite, which is this heavy lifting, this idea that I'm not doing enough. But I think that one comparison I can think of is like reviewing accommodations versus modification for those that are studying for SPED 186. Others that are going over other exams like EC 391 or PPR. You're going to be proactive instead of reactive, looking at different managements, focusing. And the focus doesn't include rewriting notes, multitasking, but focus on one objective only. And when you keep that task small, your brain can stay present. When your brain stays present, confidence builds. We just talked about confidence last week, and I'll be sure to link that somewhere above. And when your confidence builds, consistency follows. This is more than just about studying. This is more also about life. And then I want to walk right into phase 3, which is closing that loop. So I started out by decompressing. My second thing is to use some low lifting studying activities. And then my last one is to close the loop. When I'm closing the loop, I'm ending my study time with a pause on purpose. I can name one thing that I've strengthened. Not everything you still need to learn, because that's that off track thinking that only measures what you haven't done. I'm looking for you to measure what you acquired. And then decide the exact entry points for your next session. And then stop. That's the end of the study session. This is the way that I teach many people to do within 30 minutes. because 30 minutes of studying purposefully and intentionally beats an hour full of on and off brain activity. But this skill is closing the loop. It signals your brain that the progress is really happening and that studying is contained, not this endless loop. And closing this loop is how you leave the session with clarity instead of guilt. That momentum begins to build instead of exhaustion. So I'm suggesting that you in control and not collapse. And your short reflections can look something like writing one sentence. Not note taking, as I said before, but writing one sentence that says, today I strengthened whatever that particular competency was. Then decide on tomorrow's entry task. What are you going to work on? And remembering that stopping on purpose protects your motivation. And these are all three of these phases that I'm suggesting to you and talking to you about. Helps you to end without guilt, helps you to close, and also helps you to study smarter and not longer. Many times we equate length of time with amount of information, the proper information acquired. And while I'm not going to say that your length of time doesn't matter, because I'm trying to help you stack these small intentional times together, I will say that studying smarter does not mean cutting corners. It means that you're aligning your effort with impact. And after a long day of teaching, effort is not the problem. Most educators, like yourself, are already working very hard, harder than they probably should. But the problem is that traditional study habits reward time spent, not learning gain. And time spent will exhaust, rarely produces any types of results. So studying smarter starts with this shift. And longer doesn't mean better, but focus does. See, we're not college students anymore. We have families and additional responsibilities, and we use the use of these methods that I'm sharing with you are helpful. And I can use these throughout Monday through Friday. My weekend method, I can use the longer approach. But when I've taught all day long, that approach of I'm going to study for 2 hours tonight, you're going to be asleep like the young lady was, about to fall asleep at the couch in the pictures that I showed you before. What I would like to introduce is for you to be able to use some high impact strategies for when your brain is tired. You're going to choose some skills, some things that will help instead of harm. Things like a micro session versus a marathon. See, consistency rewrites confidence. It rewires it. It helps us to know that we're on the right path. Active recall versus passive review. We can squash all of that and just use the one question is enough. 1 to 2 questions are enough to focus on. Then I do believe that having the same time and the same cues will help you. You know, it's creating this habit of changing your clothes out. Maybe it's sitting at a desk like I'm at right now, or not getting in your most comfortable of the spots, but setting a habit that here, I'm going to sit here at 6 p.m. and I'm going to pull out my notebook and I'm going to go over this particular thing. And then, of course, studying before you rest. Not studying after exhaustion, because you're going to hit zero. That's not the type of studying that we want. That's not the type of time and dedication we want. But truly, a focused 15 minutes is going to beat after school trying to drag yourself into an hour, hour and a half. It's going to beat it every time.